So today we are back going to be doing our Survivor Season 39 Island of the Idols boot list, guessing where everyone is going to fall from first boot to top three and winner of Survivor Season 39. So my name is Rachel.
And I'm Alyssa, and as always, these boot lists are completely spoiler free. Rachel and I don't like looking at spoilers because it doesn't make it as fun. So, yeah, none of these boot lists are based on like speculation or social media or anything of the sort. So, feel free to keep watching even if you're not looking for spoilers.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen our cast assessment from yesterday, definitely check that out. And so we're sort of going to be basing our boot list on the cast assessment because that's where we really broke down every single player and if we think they're going to make it pre-merge, post-merge, top five. So that's what we're going to be breaking down even further today, where we're going to be going through every single boot.
Yes. And some of the comments that we made yesterday when we were doing our cast assessment, we did mention like about where we thought people would end up. But if we decided to put them someplace different today, like don't come at us. We just changed our minds.
Yeah, so for the first boot, honestly, when I was doing my boot list this morning, it was sort of difficult to figure out where people were placed with the yellow tribe and the purple tribe. I felt like that the yellow tribe is a little bit stronger when I was just comparing the men and women on those tribes, but like for me overall, no one really stood out as someone that could be a good first boot kind of thing. Everyone looks sort of normal, but Alyssa and I, it was interesting. We were talking before we went live, and we have sort of similar boot lists considering we did it totally separate. But my first boot, I said purple was going to lose the first immunity. And then I was sort of between Dan, Jason, and Kelly on the chopping block because those three just sort of stand out in a way of like they're different from the other people, or they might not be able to do the social game with the other people at first. So they just seemed like oddballs for me. And so I said Jason is going to be voted out first. I feel like Dan could be the father figure of the tribe since he's a little bit older. He's a friendly dude looking. And Kelly, I think she's smart enough to do the shut the heck up strategy that Jason wants to do. But I feel like Jason, in his bio and stuff, like we mentioned yesterday, he just looks really insecure and that he's going to talk too much. And then he says he wants to use a lot of self-deprecation to be funny. And I'm like, that's a Jason Derwin. And I feel like Jason will, or that's a Jacob Derwin. And then Jason's going to get himself voted out first because he's a little just too antsy at the start.
Yeah, I think that's like good justification of why Jason would get voted out early. I put him later, but we'll talk about that when I get to it. I had Nora as my first boot just because Rachel and I have talked before about how like it seems like the first boots are like pretty much always women, especially like older women or women of color. And yeah, I think we mentioned in our cast assessment yesterday that Nora had the potential to like rub people the wrong way. So yeah, I just thought that it's possible that people would just gang up on her and take her out because she's like an easy target. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that is really, really interesting because for my second boot, I actually put Nora as well. So Alyssa and I are both on the same page. Like she is potentially going out early, or we both feel that from her preseason stuff, which I think is really interesting. So second, I have Nora because with her entrepreneur background, I feel like she could be very bossy or intense personality. I feel like just like looking at her face, she looks super intense, like almost even intimidating, kind of. And so I don't know. I just feel like looking at her tribe, how well will she'll fit in with the men and the women. And being 36, she's actually the second oldest person or oldest woman on the tribe after Janet, who's 59, which I thought was super interesting. Like 36 is not old by any means, and yet she's the second oldest lady. But I just don't see her getting that far.
Yeah, and I feel kind of bad because I feel like she probably has a lot to offer because as an entrepreneur, you have like a lot of good skills. She's probably really good at talking to people and probably is good at like pitching ideas and pitching herself. So I feel like
Yeah.
that would make her really good if she managed to get to like a final three, but I don't think she'd ever be able to get to a final three.
Yeah, and she's from Maryland, so that sort of sucks because Alyssa and I are both from Maryland, and to put her as our first and second boot, I was like, damn, but she just looks really intimidating. Like, I would be scared to talk with her.
Yeah. As my second boot, I had Dan, kind of for the reason that Rachel was talking about earlier, where like of the tribe people, he seems like one of the people who wouldn't fit in super well. And also, since he's older, if they're now losing two challenges in a row, they're probably looking to like get rid of people who they see as like dead weight in challenges because that's what I feel like always happens. Like the first couple votes are more about trying to make the tribe stronger than like people who annoy you or whatever. And it was just like good luck that Nora was both someone who annoyed them and someone who was um not strong in challenges. So yeah.
That's interesting because I have Dan going out in a few votes, still pre merge. And so he made it past the first boot for me. But then I feel like once you're on the chopping block at the beginning, you can never really get off the chopping block, especially because if it's like a physical thing when people can just look at you and see something, then I feel like it's difficult to get back into people's good graces after someone marks you as a weaker person or like someone that can't hold their weight in challenges. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I feel like if that happens, you then need to like prove yourself in like a hero challenge or something, which very rarely happens, I feel like.
Yeah, so now we're at 18 people, thinking maybe, a tribe swap into three tribes. So three tribes of six. And then now we're literally just guessing because we don't know if the tribes are going to stay the same. We don't know if tribes are different at 18 people. We don't know if the whole Boston Rob Sandra twist is going to like do crazy things for the game, so many advantages, like everything like that. So after this point, it gets a little bit random on who goes where, but I think the main takeaways are if Alyssa and I have similarities on the placements of people, like, oh, are people pre merge? Oh, are people post merge, early or late post merge? Or, oh, do we have a similar final five? I think that's sort of telling about where we think people are going to be landing, even if they're not exactly like, oh, seventh place or 12th place, but like in that similar cluster kind of thing.
Yeah, I think we kind of said this also for Edge of Extinction, where it's more difficult to determine, especially because this time we also didn't get a super lot of information about these people. And I feel like a lot of the hype for this season has been like overshadowed by season 40 hype. So it's harder
Mhm.
when not as many people I feel like are paying attention to this season, maybe than they are to season 40. So, yeah.
Yeah, so my third boot, I have Kelly. When they're tribes of six, if there is a six, three tribes of six tribe swap at 18, I think Kelly, she just looks like one of the smaller females on this season based on like body type kind of stuff. And so, especially in a tribe of six, you are probably going to get voted out based on strength. There's really nowhere to hide. I'm like, okay, maybe Kelly's saving grace could be that she's good at puzzles, but I just feel like, I don't know. I just don't see Kelly necessarily making it that far.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I ended up putting Kelly like still pre-merge boot, but getting a little further. The person that I had going out third was Ronnie, just because we talked about how his face looks super punchable, and also how like poker players don't have a super good like reputation in Survivor, and like if he comes off as sleazy or whatever. And obviously, like he's a pretty buff dude, but I'm not sure that would keep him safe because sometimes in the smaller tribes, like the tribes of six or whatever, it is more about who annoys you than who is like a good player just because there's less like buffer people. In a tribe of six, it's much harder to avoid someone else. So, yeah.
Yo, okay, that is literally, I have Ronnie going fourth for me, and that is literally what I wrote in my notes, Alyssa. So I wrote, his face just looks smarmy. Even if he doesn't tell people that he's a professional poker player, I feel like he just like looks like he'll rub you the wrong way kind of thing. And similar to you, I wrote, usually big dudes go home early if they do something annoying. And so, like, yes, he is a strong physical competitor, or at least he looks like he can hold his weight in challenges. But like you're saying, in a tribe of six, if someone is super annoying or sleazy, smarmy, you just like I wouldn't keep them around because it's hard to live with them. So I see Ronnie going home early as well. And so I think that's super interesting. We literally had the same reasons and pretty much the same exact placement.
Yeah, I was telling Rachel before we started filming, I feel like part of the reason why we end up being so similar in these things is because we both have like been talking about Survivor together for like pretty long time now. It's
Four
been what,
years.
4 years? And so like we look at the same things and I feel like we kind of see Survivor in the same way. So that's interesting. I feel like I also say interesting a lot in this podcast. But anyway, as my fourth boot, I had Janet just because she's an older woman. If someone loses, like Rachel was saying, sometimes they pick off, or I guess I said that, they pick off the weak people. And if she's perceived as like a weak older person, because like she has the lifeguard skills, but if she's more of like a lifeguard manager than an actual lifeguard
Mm.
now, she might not be as good at that sort of thing. And then also like there are like other components to this. So yeah, Janet.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have Janet going in a few boots. My fifth boot was Dan. So on your list, Dan is already voted out. And now Dan is getting voted out on mine. So interesting that he could be pre-merge, and I think it's also interesting that we both picked Tom over Dan because I was sort of going back and forth, like Tom and Dan stereotype archetype, like an older man kind of thing. I was like, okay, who do I pick to go first, who's gonna go later? And so I think it's neat that we both picked Dan. And so sort of similar to Kelly being voted out, smaller tribes, you need everyone to hold their weight, and Dan is a little bit older. And because Tom was in the National Hockey League, I feel like Tom would be more athletic than Dan. And so that's why Tom would make it farther than Dan, even though they're like sort of similar kind of archetype, but I see Dan going before Tom.
I still had Tom going pre-merge, so
Oh, well,
they love
oh
me.
no.
In fifth place, I had Vince. Rachel and I were talking yesterday on our cast list about like we both really like him, but we're not sure that he can go far. And I feel like that was kind of just I have the feeling from like his bio answers and stuff that he's probably going to be a pre-merge boot. So that was really it. He needed to be pre-merge. I
Yo,
put him in one of my
Alyssa,
pre-merge spots.
we're literally on the same freaking wavelength because my sixth boot, Vince was your fifth boot, right? My
Yeah,
sixth boot, Vince. So I'm just like one behind everywhere that you are a little bit on these. But yeah, I put Vince as my sixth person voted out. He looks like one of the less physically strong people on the tribe, even though yesterday in our cast assessment, Alyssa and I are both like super hype on Vince. I would want to see Vince go very, very far. There's just something about him. I feel like that is a little bit too excited about the game, and that could get him voted out early. Like he's too antsy. Um, I feel like I was gonna put him later, like maybe making the merge. I think he can go far in the game with luck if he's lucky and gets on a tribe that doesn't lose or something like that. He gets somehow in a majority alliance, but just like looking the people on the tribe, I feel like he could be an oddball on the tribes that he's on. And yeah, here I was between Vince and Molly, and then I ended up letting Molly get further and having Vince get voted out now. So sixth boot, Vince is going home.
for my sixth boot, I had Tom. Like Rachel was saying, he and Dan are kind of similar archetypes, and just I feel like he could be very abrasive and like start rubbing people the wrong way. And then also, I had the merge at 12, so this boot would be when people are kind of starting to look more towards the merge and maybe be like, oh, he's a strong dude, even if like he's older, so we should like off him. So
Oh, YOLO. Yeah. Yeah, so at 14, that's how many people we're at now. I was thinking we used to switch back into two tribes, so two tribes of seven, and then I also put the merge at 12 people. So for my seventh boot, I said Janet. I feel like Janet and Elaine, similar to the Dan and Tom archetype, they're sort of similar in that regard as well, but I feel like Elaine will make it further than Janet because she has more personality, more spunk, it seems like, from her videos. And then I also wrote that Janet's leader type personality could get her voted out, or maybe she's not holding her weight on the tribe. So I feel like very similar to what you said, Alyssa, about like the lifeguarding may be good for leadership, but it also might rub people the wrong way. So I don't see Janet making the merge.
Yeah. My seventh boot was Kelly, kind of for the reasons that Rachel said earlier. She just didn't strike me as like a particularly strong player. So,
Sad.
yeah.
Yeah. So eighth boot, this is my boot right before the merge. So not the merge boot, but eighth boot, I have Erin. Similar to what Alyssa just said about like you would be thinking that the merge is going to be happening at maybe 12, at 13 kind of stuff. Um, Aaron, big dude, similar body type to Ronnie, who was also just voted out. And so I would want to vote Aaron out right before the merge or right at the merge. So like a merge boot because he's probably going to be a big challenge threat coming up. So I put Aaron getting voted out right before the merge.
Yeah. My pre merge boot, my last pre merge boot was Tommy, kind of for the same reason. Like he's pretty buff. And so they'd probably vote him out, anticipating the merge and anticipating that they don't want to be going into individual immunity challenges with him.
Yeah, so merge at 12. I had a 7-5 split, 7 on yellow, 5 on purple, which like really doesn't matter because everyone is going to be in two different tribe swaps. So I don't think, or hopefully we won't have such distinct tribal lines where no one talks to anyone else kind of thing. But it's interesting, Alyssa. My merge boot is Tommy. I wrote that he's a strong physical threat at the merge. So I feel like, okay, he'd be good for like King of Ponderosa and being the first merge boot. Similar to Aaron, who I just had voted out, like I would not want to go up against these like big dudes in the physical challenges. And I feel like in US Survivor and even Australian Survivor recently, we just see right when the merge hits, it's like big dude that goes back to back to back, like the first three or four, which I think is really interesting. So Tommy, I said he's one of the physically stronger looking men at the merge compared to the guys that I have left are Dean, Tom, Jack, and Jamal. I feel like Tommy is the most threatening looking out of those guys.
It's really funny because I actually had Aaron as my post merge boot. So we just had
Whoa.
Tommy and Aaron like flipped in the positions that we had them. Because, like we said, big guys go. Aaron is a big guy. So,
That's,
yeah.
yeah. I think it'll be really interesting to see if this season, if that does play out or if they make it further. Even all of these people, because we have very similar pre merges, and that leaves our post merges very, very similar as well. But my 10th boot, so the second person being voted out at the merge, I put Molly. I feel like she could be strategic, kind, but then she's also threatening, so people would vote her off. And like she looks like she's fun and quirky, but it also looks like she talks a lot. And just her hair, it sort of reminds me of Michelle from Millennials versus Gen X. And so I feel like she can be that like strategic, pretty person that gets voted out because they're like strategic in the quiet sense. So yeah.
Yeah. As my 10th boot, so the second post merge boot, I had Jason because he was one of the stronger guys that I had left. I didn't think that he was like particularly strategically enticing. And so, if we're going with the same assumption that we're making of the pattern of strong guys going, which, like Rachel said, might not happen, then I would say he would be next.
Jason does well on yours. Jason's first boot on mine. So my 11th boot, going along with the big dudes kind of thing, I have Tom going out, so the NHL player. I feel like Tom he could be very interesting on TV, but I also could see that he's like one of the people that doesn't get a very good edit. And then he gets voted out in sort of like the lull of the season before it picks up again before Final Five and the finale night. So I feel like these middle episodes where after the merge hits, after things maybe aren't as exciting anymore, Tom doesn't get a good edit and then he gets voted out. And so I feel like he could be in one of those boring vote outs at the merge where they do a double episode or something like that. I just don't see Tom winning, kind of similar thing to Dan. I just don't see them making it that far.
Yeah, I agree with that. And like I said, I had Tom already going, so I was not particularly invested in his ability to get far in the game. As my next boot, I was kind of going with the same vein of eliminating challenge contenders still, but I was thinking about like the one female who's very like um, physically fit. Elizabeth being like an Olympic swimmer, I feel like people would be like, we can't keep her around that much longer, especially like if she is a good social player. This might be when they start like angling to get rid of social threats as well as physical threats, and because Elizabeth is both of those things, they
Alyssa,
would.
we're on the same wavelength. I put Elizabeth as my next person voted out, so we're just one off again. I think yeah, challenge threat, so she could be voted out. I feel like dissimilar to Janet, the lifeguard lady, I feel like Elizabeth could have the better social game, and she seems like fun and quirky. Like I would want to be her friend, but now's the time where you sort of need to buckle down and like who's a threat to win the game, and she's a challenge could be a challenge beast because she has the mental mindset from like doing the Olympics. I bet she can stand on poles for hours, kind of thing. So I have Elizabeth going as well for very, very similar reasons that you wrote.
Yay! I like that we're on the same wavelength because then it's like I feel like validated in my decisions. My next person on my boot list, my number 12 was Chelsea, just because like I kind of forgot that she existed because I don't think
Yeah.
she made a particularly strong impression on me. And I was like, okay, if they need someone to vote out that like is kind of just a filler vote, it might be Chelsea.
See, yeah, it's like the boring boots that are in the middle of the season that like are the people that don't get a lot of screen time. I had Chelsea going around this point too, but then when I went down and got to my final five, I was like, oh my God, this final five is too stacked. So then I didn't get Chelsea voted out, and now she's in my final five sort of as like a goat person because my final five was just too many strong people. I felt like I needed some less strong people.
I didn't really think about goats when I was making my finals, so hopefully it's not that bad.
Yeah. So my 13th person, I have Jack in there. I feel like Jack, the young, stereotypical Aussie Joe, kind of long haired surfer dude archetype. He's a funny, goofy dude. I feel like he can be strategic, at least, doing grad school. He can't be a total idiot. And so with his social game, I think you would need to get rid of him. And I just wouldn't bring him necessarily to a final five because that's a little risky with fire and all of that. And so, Jack, I like him, but you would want to cut him before the final five. And so, he's probably also good at challenges because he's like small and sort of buff, I guess.
Once again, we're on like the same wavelength. I had Jack as
Yay.
my number 14. From my number 13, I had Dean just because he seems like someone who could again be kind of like a whole package threat because he's like younger, seems charismatic, seems strong. So yeah, I had Dean
Shoot.
going.
Okay, so my 14th, I have Jamal. Similar to what you're saying for Dean, I think Jamal seems just so freaking fun. You would need to vote him out because he could probably win the game. And when you're getting down to the nuts and bolts of this, similar to Jack, Jamal could be good at challenges kind of thing. And I'm like, wow, he's just too likable, and you don't want a social threat getting to the final three. So sad Jamal.
Yeah, sad Jamal. Like I said, I had Jack as my number 14, basically for the reasons Rachel said. It's like a similar archetype to like Joe, Ozzy, Devin, I guess. And
Yeah.
so that's
Just
around when in the season they seem to go.
like a smaller version of Devin, who he wrote in his bio that he wanted to be like. So little less threatening, I guess, than like Devin and Joe and those kinds of people, but still threatening. And those guys never make it that far to the end, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you could kind of say that Fabio was like one of that kind of archetype, but I think his winning was more of a fluke than a proof that that type of person does well.
Yeah, I feel like in the cast assessment yesterday, I feel like I was saying that Jack could go really far if he does the super dumbed down Fabio kind of like I'm just a surfer dude, and then maybe lies about going to grad school and he like makes up something up about his job or something.
Yeah, I don't know though. We'll see.
So that's really interesting. My 15th person before finale night, my final five, I have Elaine going. Is that
Me
yours?
too.
Oh my God. I had Elaine making my final five, but then I was like, oh no, there's too many good people on this and made it too hard. So I have Elaine going in sixth place just because like social threat as well. And maybe at this point, she has lost a lot of her alliance members, and it just seems like a good place for her to go. Cause I don't know. I could either see her making final three as well, but in my scenario, she's going out at sixth.
Yeah, basically that's the entire reason I had her going out too. So
She just seems likable. I wouldn't want her in the final three.
yeah, me either. You stole
So
everything I was gonna say though.
my final five, I have Dean, Chelsea, Karishma, Missy, and Lauren. Who's your final five?
My final five is Jamal, Molly, Lauren, Karishma, and Missy. So I think we had 3 of 5 the same.
Yeah, who Karishma, Missy, Lauren?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. I see it. Okay, so my final five at final five finale night, the first person to be voted out, I said Dean because Dean in my scenario right now is the only male. I would not want to bring Dean to a fire challenge because he could probably win against the females in fire. And Dean just seems very charismatic, fun. I want to be his friend kind of dude. And he could probably get jury votes because he's just so like outgoing. So I would vote Dean out first and not even chance him having to win the final immunity or go to fire and win.
Yeah, I had Jamal going out in 5th place, kind of for the same reason. Like we talked about earlier, he seems like it could be a really big social threat. You wouldn't want to chance him getting to fire or getting to win the final immunity and then being able to like sweet talk the jury into making him a millionaire.
Yeah, that's so interesting. We are like very, very similar. So my final four for the fire challenge, I have Missy and Lauren going to fire to battle it out. I'm saying Missy wins fire. She I being in the Air Force, I feel like she has like the grunt work mentality kind of thing. Versus Lauren seems a little more like preppy. So I feel like Missy could win fire, which like those two characteristics really don't translate to making fire, but I put Missy as winning fire.
Yeah, I didn't think about who would be going to fire together. I just knew who would lose fire and therefore go into 4th place. So
Who was your person?
my 4th place was Molly, just
Mm.
because she doesn't look like the sort of person who knows how to make a fire. And I don't know, I just feel like she's one of those people who you might try to drag along as a goat, but you might also be like, let her go to fire, see what happens. So
That's interesting because we both brought one of like I guess younger kind of females. I brought Chelsea along and you brought Molly along, and they're sort of similar archetype, interchangeable, kind of like Tom and Dan. So I think that's really, really interesting. when I first did my boot list, like I was saying, I did not have a goatee person in there. So I think it's interesting we both brought like a sort of maybe weaker player along to the end.
Yeah, yeah. So that leaves us at our final three. So Rachel, do you want to say who your final three is?
Yeah, so my final three, I have Chelsea, Karishma, and Missy. Who's in your final three?
Mine is Lauren, Karishma, and Missy. So
Which one
yeah.
is Lauren? But yeah, who's Lauren? Oh. Lauren was in Lauren just went to fire for me. I was like, who the heck is Lauren? What the heck? Okay. Oh, so we have very, very similar. We just have Lauren and Chelsea different then.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So I got down to this. I think for me, Lauren was going to be in my final three. Then I was like, a Karishma, Missy, Lauren final three looked too hard. So then I got rid of her at fire. So Chelsea's in there now. For my final three, I have Chelsea being the GOAT. So third place, I guess. And then Missy, because she's sort of younger, I'm saying maybe people didn't respect her similar to the others, or she maybe followed the older people on the tribe. So I have Missy going second place, and then I have Karishma winning Soul Survivor.
Yeah, I didn't think anyone was really a goat. So in my final three scenario, everyone gets at least one vote.
Oh, wow.
But I had Missy winning first just because I think like she has a really good story and she seems like she would be a really hard worker and so people would probably like respect her and want her to win. And I would say that Karishma also like had a good chance but then didn't have as good of like a final tribal performance. So she came in second.
And your third, Lauren?
And my third place was Lauren, yeah.
Wow. So, dang, this was our boot list. I think it's just so interesting how we have so many similarities. Like, honestly, a lot of people that we put on our list are one person off from one another. Our final three is two of the same people. Our final five is three out of the five same people. So, for you all watching, or if you're watching later after the stream has been posted, let us know down below who is on your boot list, who is first boot, who is winning. If we have a lot of similarities or not, I am like super interested in knowing because I find this very, very neat that this just happened randomly.
Yeah, so let us know down in the comments below what your boot list is like. And hopefully our boot lists are correct because if not, we're both going to be really screwed. So, yeah, we'll have to see if our first boot is even correct this Wednesday when the season starts again. Super exciting.
I'm so excited. And then the Big Brother finale, but that's that's sort of a bop now after the second HOH last night. So
Yeah.
lollers.
Yep. So we'll see you guys next week as we talk about the first episode of season 39. We'll
Yes,
see you
thanks for
then.
watching.
Bye.